All right, let's talk about David Hawkins. He was a psychiatrist, but also a spiritual teacher, and he came up with this really powerful and, yeah, super controversial way to think about human suffering.
So let me just start by asking you this. What if you could just let go of any negative feeling? I mean, any of them, just like that. Sounds a little too good to be true, doesn't it? Well, that's the giant promise at the heart of what Hawkins called the pathway of surrender. Okay, so to really get what he was on about, you have to understand the problem he was trying to fix. He famously said, "It is not thoughts or facts that are painful, but the feelings that accompany them." Think about that. He believed we're all walking around with this giant invisible backpack full of suppressed, painful feelings. And that backpack, that's what's weighing us down and making us miserable.
So, what do you do about that giant backpack of pain? Well, Hawkins' solution, his big idea, was something he called the path of surrender.
Now, the word surrender can sound a bit passive, right? Like you're just giving up. But that's not what he meant at all. For Hawkins, it was about reaching this state of total inner freedom. It's this place where you can look at a situation and genuinely, deep down, feel, you know what, it's okay if it happens, and it's okay if it doesn't. It's about letting go of that desperate attachment to the outcome. He even had this super simple little technique to help you get there. He called it the what for technique. Let's try it. Say you really, really want a new Cadillac. Okay, ask yourself, what for? Maybe the answer is, well, for the status. Right. What for? For respect. And what's the respect for? Well, for security. If you keep digging like that, he said, you'll always land on the same basic goals. You're just trying to overcome fear and find some happiness. But that little exercise, that's just a tiny piece of a much, much bigger picture. To really map out this whole journey from fear to happiness, Hawkins built an entire framework, a way to chart our inner emotional landscape. And right at the heart of that framework is his most famous and, believe me, most controversial idea of all. It's called the map of consciousness, basically a hierarchy of every human emotion. So here's a quick look at a simplified version. You can see he gives every emotion an energy level number. Way down at the bottom, you've got stuff like apathy, where your whole view on life is just hopeless. Then you climb up, and way at the top, you've got love, where the world feels benign. But the real magic number here, the one to pay attention to, is 200, the level of courage. Hawkins said this is the absolute tipping point. It's where you finally cross the line from these negative, life-draining emotions into positive, empowering ones. So what does that actually feel like, moving up the scale? Well, think about it. Down in apathy, your inner voice is just constantly saying, I can't. It's a state of paralysis. But when you hit that 200 mark, courage, that voice changes. It starts saying, you know what? I can handle it. And for Hawkins, that wasn't just some small mood boost. No, that was a fundamental shift in your entire reality and personal power. Okay, so right about now, this all probably sounds like a pretty interesting self-help system. Maybe even something you'd want to try. But this is where the story takes a very sharp turn, because now we have to get into the central conflict. Is this stuff the key to miracles, or is it just a bunch of pseudoscience? You can't deny the appeal, especially when you hear the claims he made. In his book, he talks about healing himself from a whole list of chronic physical illnesses. We're talking diverticulitis, hypoglycemia, migraines, even his own vision problems. And how did he do it? According to him, simply by using this technique of letting go. I mean, wow. But for every person who sees a miracle, there's someone else who sees, well, something very different. The criticism can be brutal. Take this comment from someone named Travinsky Waldorf, who flat out said, David Hawkins was an obvious charlatan with his books filled with New Age mumbo-jumbo. So yeah, not a lot of gray area there. So what is it that creates such a massive divide? Well, it really boils down to one thing: the technique he used to create that map of consciousness and to, in his view, prove his claims. It's a practice called applied kinesiology, but most people just call it muscle testing. So what is muscle testing? The idea is pretty wild. It claims your body itself can tell the difference between what's true and what's false. The way it's supposed to work is someone holds their arm out and you push down on it. If they're holding a true statement in their mind, their arm muscle stays strong. But if the statement is false, the muscle suddenly goes weak. Your body supposedly just knows. Okay, now, as you can probably guess, mainstream science is not on board with this. It's widely seen as an unproven technique. But what's really fascinating is that Hawkins himself admitted there were tons of things that could screw up the results. Things like wearing synthetic clothes, metal jewelry, even the tone of the tester's voice. Which leads critics to ask a very fair question: how on earth could you control for all that in a lecture hall with 1,000 people? Of course, his defenders have an answer for that. People like Clay Pulley argue that you can't judge Hawkins by the standard rules. He says, essentially, Hawkins's kinesiology was different, so any of the normal critiques just aren't relevant. And that right there shows you just how deep the divide is. It's like they're speaking two different languages. And this fundamental disagreement over his methods, it fuels this huge debate that leaves him with let's say, a very divided legacy. Because even with all the scientific controversy, you have tons of people who swear by his work. Look at this comment from Vicky Deneroff. She says his advice on looking at the emotions behind her thoughts was very helpful to me personally. For so many people, it's like, hey, I don't care about the muscle testing. The actual advice works for me. The practical application is what matters to them. But the controversies don't end with the science. Oh no. There's another whole layer of frustration, and this one is about control over his work. Check out this comment from Emily D. Lectures on YouTube got taken off, thanks to good old Veritas Publishing, aka Susan. Susan is a reference to Hawkins' wife who runs his publishing company. And this isn't just a rumor. His publisher, Veritas, is very, very clear about this. They have a policy that basically says the map of consciousness is trademarked, it's copyrighted, and no, you cannot get permission to use it, reproduce it, or share it, period. As you can imagine, that kind of iron-fisted control has stirred up a lot of feelings among his own followers. You know, maybe one of the most interesting and balanced takes comes back again from Clay Pulley. He brings up the philosopher Ken Wilber and makes this really great point. He says that someone can be genuinely enlightened, they can attain non-duality, but that doesn't automatically mean they're an expert on everything else. In other words, just because someone might have had a profound spiritual breakthrough, it doesn't mean they're suddenly infallible when it comes to worldly things. So where does that leave us with David Hawkins? His work is a total paradox, isn't it? On one hand, you have what might be a truly profound path to freedom, a simple idea that could genuinely change your life. And on the other, you have what looks like a fascinating but completely unprovable roadmap of pseudoscience. And that question, that tension between those two poles, is really the question at the heart of his entire legacy.